guys, and welcome back to a brand new exciting video. My name is Greg, and it's great to see all of your smiling faces once again. Today, I'm going to be showing you how to achieve the perfect exposure when doing video and when doing photo. Now, in order to do this, we need to talk about something called the exposure triangle. Now, the exposure triangle, as you might have heard of already, consists of three main parts. That is shutter speed, ISO, and aperture. So today I'm going to be showing you how to master all three of these settings in order to achieve the perfect exposure. So when it comes to shooting video, there's one rule that you have to follow with shutter speed, and that is to always keep your shutter speed at double your frame rate. So for instance, if I'm shooting at 24 frames per second, I want to make sure that I have a shutter speed of 1/50th of a second. And for those lucky people who have 120 frames per second, you guys will need to set your shutter speed at 1/240th of a second. So basically, this is just going to help you get your videos looking that little bit more cinematic. So when you crank your shutter speed above, let's say, 1/100th of a second, your videos are going to become slightly more jittery and your movements are going to be intensified quite a lot. Shooting with a lower shutter speed will get you to have a lot more motion blur and your footage will look slightly smoother. Now, you might want to shoot at a high shutter speed or a low shutter speed for different situations. For instance, if I'm shooting a cinematic sequence, I'm going to want to shoot at a slightly lower shutter speed just to make it look that little bit smoother and overall that little bit more cinematic. However, let's say I'm filming a music video that is full of action, full of beat drops, and it's got a very fast tempo. I might want to shoot at a slightly higher shutter speed to get those jittery and more intense movements, as it might fit the song or the music video slightly better. Another thing that shutter speed affects is the amount of light that comes into the camera. Having a lower shutter speed will allow more light to come into the camera, ultimately making your image that little bit brighter. Having a higher shutter speed will allow less light into the camera, overall making your image darker. So if you're doing photos and let's say you're shooting something that is still or something in your hand, then you're going to want to shoot with a lower shutter speed. If you're shooting something fast, like something at a sports event or a car driving by, you're going to want to shoot at a much higher shutter speed so that you don't have a blurred image. Now, the big thing when it comes to all three of these settings is balance. Balance is the most important thing, because if you don't balance all three of these settings out, you're not going to get the best possible image. Next, let's move on to number 2, and that is my personal favorite, which is aperture. The reason I love aperture so much is it allows me to get something called bokeh. And bokeh is essentially the out of focus, very creamy, smooth looking parts of your image. So if you want to achieve that bokeh in your image, you're going to want to lower your aperture to somewhere around f1.4 or f1.8. This will allow you to achieve that bokeh effect. Now, if you up your aperture to something like f4 or f5.6, you're going to find that more of the image is in focus and that you're going to have a less bokeh. So for example, when you're shooting landscape photography, you don't want one object in focus, you'd want everything to be in focus. So in order to do that, you're going to want to up your aperture to around f4 or f5.6 or even a little bit higher than that. That will make sure that everything is in focus. Now, on the flip side of that, if I'm taking a picture of, let's say, my phone in my hand, and I only want the phone to be in focus, then I'm going to have to shoot with an aperture of, let's say, around f1.4 to 1.8. This is going to allow me to get that bokeh in the background and have the phone in focus and everything else blurred out. So when it comes to video, aperture performs pretty similarly to shutter speed in terms of the way that it lets light into the camera. A lower aperture of, let's say, f1.4 will let more light into the camera to that of, let's say, f4. So I definitely recommend shooting with a low aperture lens when in a low light situation. So to sum up aperture, the higher your aperture is, the darker your image or video will be, and the less depth of field you're going to have. And the lower your aperture is, let's say f1.4, f1.8, the more depth of field you're going to have and the lighter your image will be. Now onto the third and final part of the exposure triangle, that is ISO or ISO. And this is probably the easiest setting out of the three to use because it only affects the sensitivity of the camera to light. What I mean by this is the lower your ISO, the darker your image will be, as the camera is not as sensitive to light. The higher you crank your ISO to something like 800 or 1600, the more sensitive the camera will be to light. Therefore, your image will be a lot brighter. The only thing you need to focus on when adjusting your ISO is that the higher you go, the more grain there will be in your photo or video. So there's one rule that I generally stick to when shooting on any camera, and that is that I don't go above ISO 800. Now, obviously, if you're on your newer full-frame cameras, you can go a little bit higher than that and still get a clean image, but just to be safe, I like to keep mine at ISO 800. I hope this is making sense for you guys. I'm really trying to make this as easy as possible, because I know when I was learning this was the hardest thing for me to learn, and it really takes quite a bit of practice, so I hope I'm making this as easy as possible for you guys. So try and keep your ISO as low as possible at all times. Now, the hardest part of all three of these settings is balance. Balancing these three settings to get the perfect exposure is what you really need to practice. And if you guys need a little bit of help, you guys can always go onto Google and search for an exposure triangle and go have a look at the different pictures. Now, I hope this video has helped you. I know when I was learning this, I turned to a lot of YouTube tutorials to find out how to use these settings correctly to expose my images properly. It's really important for a photographer or a videographer to understand how their camera works and how the settings on a camera work and how it will affect the overall image. If you guys are able to master these three settings, you guys are going to get really, really crispy, deliciously smooth and sharp footage, and your videos and photos are going to look really professional. Anyway guys, I hope you learned something new today and enjoyed the video. If you did, please smash that thumbs up button. Don't forget to subscribe down below, and please don't forget to turn on post notifications to stay updated and never miss another upload. As always, if you guys are the first to comment on one of my videos, you will be featured in one of my upcoming videos. Anyway, I hope you learned something new on this very channel, and if you did, I hope to see you here again. Anyway, I post 2 new filmmaking tutorials every single week, so I'll catch you in the next one. And in order to get the perfect exposure, you need to learn the exposure... Wow, I really cannot talk today. The explosive triangle. It's the exposure triangle. And we need to perfect this in order to get our videos looking good. I post 2 new filmmaking tutorials every single day. Every single day. Jeepers, that would be nice, wouldn't it? 2 uploads every single day. That's 14 videos a week. Quick maths, that's solid 56 videos a month. Jeepers, I'd really be killing it. That's over 600 videos a year. Let me know in the comments down below if you'd like 600 videos a year. And I'll see if I can do that for you guys. Anyway, I post 2 new filmmaking tutorials every single week, so I'll catch you in the next one. Completely missed the camera there.